This is it, gang. The last multi-game NFL slate of the year. It is the NFL Conference Championship weekend, so we got to figure out who the must-plays are on DraftKings, of course. Today, I'm going to hand build. I'm going to optimize. I'm going to simulate lineups. I'm also going to look at the projections and the ownership projections from Stokastic.com to find out the data we need to build some winning lineups, say, to get unique, to give ourselves a shot to win one more big prize here again, the last multi-game slate of the year. Let's get into it. Let's move me around. Let's look at the projections. Oh, I was loading Fantasy Cruncher in advance. Spoiler alert. Let's look at the data here and get into it. And a big week in the world of fantasy football, of, I guess, competitive gambling, whatever we want to say. Our pal Pete Overzet and the ship-chasing guys, of course, Gretch, Karain, Dricko, Sacrilegious, getting to the bottom of mysteries like the Scooby-Doo crew of cheating going on NFFC. And when you guys wonder why I don't play on some of the sites that aren't Underdog, that aren't DraftKings, that aren't Drafters, that's why. That's why I also, we had negotiations back in Football Outsiders days. It's one of the sites, kind of saw firsthand how not buttoned up things were there. I'm not going to name names, but I would say that it doesn't surprise me too much. And of course, I'm one of the people that you always hear on the channel talking about sports betting. People always worry about being rigged. DFS worry about being rigged. The leagues aren't rigging things. People rigging things are the people who are in control of small sites people aren't paying attention to. So just something to keep in mind with that as we go forward. But shouts to those guys getting the ESPN headlines and all of that. I'm sure a lot of you boiled up in that controversy as well. We got the chat here, Justin, Tank. We got a lot of good guys here, so let's keep it going. Let's get going into the projections. And of course, we are going to look at projections and ownership projections from Stokastic first. And if you want to get this data for yourself, you check out this neat new graphic. Whoa! Spags spent some time in Canva yesterday, so check out that one. Use the promo code SPLASH or check the link in the description. Save yourself 15% on any Stokastic package. That includes weekly ones as well. So if you just want data for the weekend, you just want data for the next few weeks for the Super Bowl as well, you can get that at Stokastic.com with that promo code SPLASH. The only promo code I believe they have going right now to save yourself 15%. Top projected players, though. Christian McCaffrey, going to be a big question here. I was actually looking through the data a little bit yesterday, trying to figure out what I want to do for myself on this slate. I don't know how you don't play Christian McCaffrey this weekend. The workload he got last week where Eli Mitchell, Jordan Mason, those guys were not trusted at all, even as Christian McCaffrey having some leg cramps in that game. We talked about the viral meme of Christian McCaffrey getting his leg massaged aggressively by an over-enthusiastic trainer. Christian McCaffrey, though, despite being banged up, despite having the calf injury as well, calf strain over the last few weeks, he got all the touches. So in a spot here where we're either expecting the Niners to have a safe lead or a somewhat safe lead, that's going to be a McCaffrey game script. Spot where the Niners are playing from behind, a lot of passing downs would also go McCaffrey's way too, especially if Deebo Samuel can't go or isn't full go in this spot against Detroit. So McCaffrey is a hard one to fade this week. I think you have to try to think of game scripts where he would make a winning lineup, but it's hard to imagine I'm not getting you 20, maybe not getting you 25, 30, upwards of 35 to 40. It's a very big range of outcomes that no other running back on the slate has. So McCaffrey, I think, is chalk. It's probably a good chalk for how I want to approach things. We'll find out as we go. Lamar, number 2 projected player on the slate at a 23.4 projection. So he's number 2. He's a QB. QBs tend to have higher projections overall than wide receivers and running backs. He is 2.5 points less, a little bit more than that, than Christian McCaffrey. So a pretty big jump here. That is part of why I expect McCaffrey to get into every lineup. And to play him or to not play him is going to be a key decision point you have to make this weekend if you are going to try to cut yourself away from the field. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who disappointed last week. What did we talk about on last week's video? Using some of the showdown principles we always talk about that are applicable for showdowns and very much applicable for short slates. It was Amon-Ra St. Brown, Christian McCaffrey making every lineup. You know who didn't make a single optimal lineup last week? Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that is what happens when you see two guys coming in a Fantasy Cruncher, which we'll look at in a moment. You see them making lineups with every single lineup having McCaffrey, every single lineup having Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's bad news for one of those guys usually in terms of being a tournament-winning player. And it ended up being McCaffrey had the winning day. You had to have him. He was in every single optimal lineup. Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, not in a single optimal lineup. So he is a guy that this week I think you are potentially buying while there's blood in the streets. And we'll talk about some of the advanced analytics here, but I think a good matchup to be buying on Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Niners defense that is only playing zone for the most part. Not a lot of man defense going the Niners' way. Brock Purdy, number 4 projected play on the slate. Would imagine that he will be the stack QB that comes up as a little bit cheaper. Niners, I will spoil it a little bit here, going to come up a lot projection-wise as well. Brock Purdy, a top projected player at a 20.1 projection. And Brandon Ayuk rounds out the top 5 at 19.5 projection. So we see 3 Niners here in the top 5. You got to imagine, again, use your brain here. Use what we've talked about every single week on the streams. When you see this many projected players together amongst highest projected and also reasonable salaries and guys like Brock Purdy, Brandon Ayuk, and then you also have McCaffrey being the highest owned player or highest projected player on the slate. That means we're probably going to see a lot of lineups with Brock Purdy, 2 Ayuk stacks with McCaffrey as well. So we're expecting there to be a baseline of a Niners +2 right away. Top value plays according to Stokastic projections. Brock Purdy is the top value overall. Lamar Jackson, number 2. So we are not seeing the cheap value coming in. There's not a Josh Reynolds this week who is a unavoidable value play that's going to pop up a lot in an optimizer. We're not seeing a Jameson Williams going to be an avoidable play in an optimizer. It is just the star players being a little bit underpriced. So Purdy, underpriced. Lamar, underpriced. McCaffrey, somehow a little bit underpriced. Ayuk, a little bit underpriced. George Kittle, a little bit underpriced. So it is very much, again, a very clear picture here of what we're going to get. And based on the value projections, I would now say we're probably going to get a QB +3 for the Niners being the base we get in this Fantasy Cruncher optimizer that I'll look at in a moment. In terms of actual value plays on the slate, the defenses are coming up as top values. Ravens D, Chiefs D. Josh Reynolds still a decent value at a 4K salary, but really nobody here is standing out as too cheap. They priced up Mark Andrews. Of course, Andrews officially active, going to be a go this weekend, it looks like. But nothing here really stands out as a good value play. Jameson Williams, again, we can go to him for the umpteenth time just to watch him not do anything. Got a bunch of GMs here. Shout out to all the GMs. Appreciate the positive energy here in chat as always. If you're just joining us, feel free to smash that like button as well. Because Splash Play, we always need it here on that march to 4K subs, to 5K subs, to 10K subs. Always appreciate your guys' support. All right, this is the updated ownership projections here. They've not updated within the last day, but nothing's moved around, of course, based on the guys coming in and out. Christian McCaffrey, top projected owned player on the the Sunday main slate here. It says Sunday only, so that confused me for a second. But of course, both games are on Sunday this weekend, something to keep in mind if you are a person that's been enjoying the Saturday games. But 61% Christian McCaffrey overall. I think you can make the case it's a little bit underowned. I would say that based on the Sims, I would guess, and I didn't run the Sims last night, so I actually don't know this one offhand. I would guess McCaffrey gets into 70 to 80% of lineups would be my thought. And then it becomes the question point of like, you have to do the thing we always talk about here. You either really play McCaffrey, I would try to play 100%, or I would fade him and just hope you luck box what that outcome is to not get McCaffrey in there. McCaffrey, very hard to avoid. I would think that the safer play is to play 100% of him. The downside of that is that obviously you're giving yourself less tournament winning upside potentially. If McCaffrey somehow gets hurt, something goes weird in that game, they score 4 passing touchdowns and McCaffrey gets pulled early. Those are the things you have to watch out for McCaffrey not to make it as a Uber chalk. George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Isaiah Pacheco, these are your highest owned guys overall. Nothing surprising here. Again, a lot of Niners coming up. Amon-Ra still coming up, and Pacheco coming up a little bit, of course, consolidating that role with Jerick McKinnon not in, and I expect him to not be in again. I haven't seen any reports otherwise on that. Guys under 10% owned, so the lower owned guys you can get to a little bit. Talk about Odell. Odell's routes being down in that game dug in a little bit more. What we talked about earlier in the week where Odell Beckham facing a KC defensive plays a lot of man overall, but Odell, the routes were down substantially in that game. We did see more Elton Nelson Aguilar in the second half. Also a little bit more Bateman throughout the course of that game as well. So I don't really know what to do with Odell. I think he's the best receiver for the matchup that he's going to be in this weekend. But Odell here, hard to trust the routes. I would say that if you're going to play double the field of him, you can get 15% Odell and probably feel good about it. But him being single-digit owned, knowing that is a good matchup, does seem kind of interesting. Debo under 10% as well. If Debo plays, I think he's the best leverage you have. Obviously, him coming off of the injuries that he has doesn't feel supposedly a pain management issue, but I don't know that that's the case. Like pain management stuff, it sometimes still go hand in hand with an injury that could get worse. And I don't know if you want Debo playing and playing through pain really in a game where maybe you don't need him quite as much. So we'll see. But if Debo goes, the ownership's going to be low. So you have to kind of plant a flag for him at 7% projected ownership. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 7.7, probably not the most viable play. Isaiah Likely, definitely going to be under-owned as we talked about earlier in the week. Mark Andrews coming in is going to be a thing that makes people not play Isaiah Likely. Do expect it to be closer to a timeshare with those two guys. Andrews coming off the injury, how well Likely is played. Likely being under 10%. You know, he has to beat Kittle or he has to do enough to make the flex alongside of Kittle, or I guess one of the other tight ends on the slate that might be good to Laporta perhaps. So Likely definitely comes some risk point as well. Definitely some opportunity cost if a guy like Kittle goes off or a guy like Laporta goes off. But Likely under 10%, I think still an interesting play for sure. Juwan Jennings, again, a player that'll look a little bit better if we do see Debo out. Jennings, some positive words from the Underdog Fantasy crew talking about his ability to maybe be a better receiver than we've seen based on the usage pattern he's had from the Niners in the past. But I don't know for Juwan Jennings if I would trust that very much. I think that if he ends up being a player who's going to get a lot of work with Debo out, I think people flock there a little bit more. But right now, he's your most live leverage against Ayuk, against Kittle. And against McCaffrey to a lesser extent. So I think Juwan Jennings has some merits here. And Ray McLeod, I will plant a flag for as well. A guy that's going to be less owned and has the opportunity to take some routes away if Debo isn't in, and more of the kind of the hasty kind of routes from the Bills, like those kind of bullshitty Isaiah McKenzie kind of routes. That's what Ray McLeod could get. And maybe could punch in a touchdown, and that might be enough to vault some past to Juwan Jennings. If we did see Debo out, Juwan Jennings became chalk. Other guys here are a little bit low owned: Khalif Raymond, Nelson Aguilar, Jared Goff, going to be one of the lower owned QBs. Again, if you are playing that Detroit wins outcome, that is definitely going to make Jared Goff more appealing. But for him to make a winning lineup, especially with Lamar likely to run a lot in that game against the Chiefs, I would say that it is probably going to be a situation for Jared Goff where very narrow outcome for him to hit. He has to hit probably with at least 2 pass catchers. I'd say probably 3 for him to have the upside to actually make a winning lineup over Lamar. You could have a chance, I suppose, that Goff puts up 25, Lamar puts up 29, and the price point difference is what makes it happen. So if you're playing Jared Goff, I wouldn't leave any salary on the table, would be the first thing. And the second thing would be like, you really need to have, I think, probably 3 pass catchers with them, but I'd say at least 2 for sure. Any CEH or MVS bullets? Charles is asking here. MVS, you could talk me into a little bit. Thought he actually made a couple nice plays in that last game, though. Again, the amount of plays he makes is very low. But MVS, a value play, like on a 2-game slate, you have to kind of be willing to play anybody. CEH, I still feel like is a little bit unappealing enough, or just Pacheco's getting that entire role for the most part. But if it works out well in the sim, if there's, if that's the thing that makes you unique, is playing CEH alongside some chalk, you could play him, but it's just about the balance of that lineup. So not my preferred play. Definitely wouldn't go like 50% of any of these guys under 20% owned. But definitely a few plays you can make here for sure if you want to try to get unique, but just it's about the overall context of the lineup. Fantasy Cruncher here. Let's look at that. Then we'll hand build our lineup. Let's look at the Fantasy Cruncher Optimizer. Of course, the main goal of looking at Fantasy Cruncher is to tell us where the math is going to drive people to most specifically, using projections like stochastics, which pretty much represent what the industry is going to look like overall. For the Fantasy Cruncher Optimizer, it tells you where people are going to land on without even realizing whether they're hand building or using projections, whether they're using an optimizer. So that's what we're trying to get to here. And right away, 100% of lineups have Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk. So what does that tell us? What we saw last week, same thing. If McCaffrey and Amon-Ra or St. Brown are in every lineup, just take one of those guys out of most of your lineups, or play, max 1 if you're running an optimizer rule set. For this one as well, I would say that Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk is definitely one that if you take one of these guys out of your lineups, just immediately sort out McCaffrey or immediately sort out Ayuk, you're going to be off the beaten path quite a bit, because people are going to be driven here quite a bit based off that value that we talked about, the value metrics, the salary being low for Ayuk as well. And you're also getting 96% Kittle. So everything that I talked about in terms of fearing the onslaught of Niners here, it's a lot of Niners overall, definitely them coming up very easily in terms of the math of it all and the salaries. So you're going to see a lot of Niners be played this weekend. And your choice is going to be like, do I lean in on that? Do I try to find other ways to get unique? As I always talk about here on short slates, people's tendency is always, I want to play more. I remember our guy Justin on Thanksgiving, not to call somebody out specifically, but I do remember it vividly because I have an elephant brain. Do elephants have a brain? Do elephants have a memory? I think so, right? Elephants never forget. Basically, I remember him asking, like, hey, like for the Dallas guys, like I'm going to play a lot of Dallas guys this weekend because like Dallas guys are everywhere. That's been the case on every multi-game slate where somebody in chat comes in and goes, yeah, I don't know, man. People are going to play a lot of Niners. I'm going to play more Niners. And it's like, that's never the answer, is how that usually goes. So it's one caveat I'll make here, and we do see a lot of Niners on the screen. Should I be over on Reynolds? I mean, we'll tell when we get to the sim. Good target share in the red zone. I wouldn't focus on that too much. We've talked about Reynolds being a safety blankie. At this point, though, he's the only guy who's a passable value on the slate. He's got 3 box score games in a row, about 10 points. I don't think Reynolds is sneaking up on anybody. If you want to make a tournament play, it is probably Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, of course, never getting there in the box score for the most part, has had the down games lately. That's what you're trying to target to win a tournament. If you're playing Josh Reynolds, you're probably playing a chalky outcome. Not as chalky as it was last week, because the price tag has come up enough for him where he's not like a great value play, but he's not going to sneak up on anybody. So like going over on Reynolds, it's not like a hero play that's going to get you unique in any stretch. It's just going to put you holding hands with the guy. It's probably not going to break the ceiling on the slate. It's the main thing I would say. Yeah, Justin, remember, I chastised him, and it ended up being that way. It wasn't a Justin thing, obviously. Justin, a very sharp guy as well, who knows college, infinitely better than a lot of people out there. But I would say for, a lot of you guys out there, like that's the tendency. Like that's the human tendency for sharp players, is like you want to try to put in more players, and it's like that's not how you should do that when the math makes it too easy to get in multiples of players. Lamar likely, and Andrews, now what? I still probably wouldn't play that one that much. It's not really, to me, a Gibbs-Montgomery situation where there's a theoretical way both guys can get there in certain game scripts. Obviously not specifically this week, where don't expect both Gibbs and Montgomery to get there against the Lions necessarily. But I think for those guys, like they do strip away from each other. Over the year, the Ravens did not run as many 2 tight end sets as I would have thought coming in, where 2 tight end sets at Georgia for Todd Monken were like very much on the menu. A lot of Darnell Washington, a lot of Brock Bowers. For whatever the case may be, he did not run as much likely Andrews over the course of the season. So you then need those guys to really be on the field more than expected together. And you also need them to produce and cut away at Zay Flowers, cut away at Aguilar, cut away at the running game to a certain extent. So I would say that's probably not my preferred play, even though that might have been a joke. Seeing a lot of double tight end lineups that are in that 5K dead zone. Any 3 running back lineups showing up. Yeah, you're getting a lot of natural 2 tight end lineups here. Looks like every flex lineup. Yeah, it looks like every lineup here is 2 tight ends. Tight ends have been a little bit of an underplayed thing in terms of putting tight ends in the flex. That is something historically that people tried to avoid in terms of hand builds for DFS, but this year it's won at a higher rate. I forget, might have been the DFS daily newsletter that had posted something about that being a little bit undervalued. But it looks like for this one, that's our first one that I've seen of the wide receiver in the flex. So yeah, you are getting 2 tight ends in 24 out of 25 lineups. So you're not getting 3 running back lineups. I don't tend to love 3 running back lineups quite as much. They're fine if you're getting them based off projections, but I think like the multiple running back thing or more running backs than you want, better for underdog battle royales than for a DFS tournament where I think you still want a wide receiver in the flex. When you are getting a lot of tight end though, I think that it definitely makes it clear that tight ends are a little bit underpriced, but people are going to land on them pretty naturally. Combos. The most important part here is going to be the combos in the stacks. So as you can see here, 1, 24, 25 out of 25 lineups have at least 3 Niners. So right away, a rule that I would make is to max out at 2 Niners. That also includes the Niners defense, but the Niners defense barely came up here at all. So that's one thing right away in the sim. You figure out, I do it manually. You could also make an Excel sorting thing where you could you could do a count of how many players are on each team. But I would say right away, like I would really try to avoid playing 3 or more Niners. I think if you consolidate production to 2, that's going to make you different. That also means that Brock Purdy is probably a little bit overplayed, as we saw in the ownership. He's coming up in 90% of these sim lineups or these optimizer lineups as well. So for Brock Purdy, I think he's a very strong play. As we talked about, this is the best matchup of the week going against Detroit. On the year, Detroit's pass defense giving up a 0.03 EPA per dropback, 0.03 EPA per pass. Of course, the expected points added metric that we talked about that reflects how much above average or below average an offense or a defense is playing or giving up. So I think because of that, you're going to see Brock Purdy be the QB for a lot of teams. So I would say going to Lamar as your QB, trying to come over the top on Brock Purdy while still having an Ayuk and a McCaffrey or a Kittle and an Ayuk or a Juwan Jennings. You try to really get the narrow needle of the thread there and you take the low-owned guy, you take a Juwan Jennings, and maybe that's your only pass catcher. Obviously, that's an unlikely outcome to hit. But that's kind of how you have to play the slate and what I would try to do and what I will try to do for myself this weekend. Well, the shows I listen to and seeing this Purdy and Lamar are going to be overwhelming chalk. You're seeing that. I just said that. Yeah, Purdy's coming up 90% of the time. So, like, yes. And I think people will then pivot to Lamar. It's also because people are playing, the most likely outcomes, which are that the Ravens win, the Niners win. So you are trying to capture, I think if you're playing lineups, you are trying to capture lineups in particular where the Chiefs win. The Chiefs win is one that I think gets a little bit underplayed given the fact that it is a game with a 3-point spread. I think as the most recent line I pulled into my sheet. So, 4-point spread, excuse me. So 4-point spread for the Chiefs. That's still within the range of winning. I think what you're trying to do is at least play one of the teams as an underdog that's going to win the game and play a game script that fits that. So, but yeah, if you're playing Purdy and Lamar, you're just playing chalk. That's basically the thing. All right, so let's hand build it here. Then we'll run the sim. We'll figure out what we're going to do with that one. And guys, if you're watching live or after the fact, please do smash that like button here. Of course, Splash Play marching on here, one-man band, trying to get to 4K subs, 5K subs, 10K subs. And as we saw earlier this week, I did rookie tight ends. Frankly, knew nobody's going to watch that, but that's important parts here of what I do in January and February to get ready for May, for August, for whatever the months are that are coming up. So that's the process you get here on Splash Play. You see my actual process, my research here live on stream, my takes, whatever I land upon looking at data. So it goes on all year round here, of course. Splash Play, the only channel that really goes full bore year round in a way, almost obsessive. So let's figure out what we're going to do here. So again, I do think with all the McCaffrey stuff for a single entry, I'm a little bit less willing to get that creative. I think McCaffrey is going to put up 20 to 30 here at a minimum. I think the most likely outcome is that he does make a winning lineup for sure. The ways that he doesn't get there are the Niners really completely boat racing them, or the Lions somehow boat racing the Niners, I guess. And even that way, McCaffrey would still probably get there unless the Niners just didn't put up points. So hard for me to not expect McCaffrey to get there. And you can see the workload last week as well. 17 rushing attempts, 12 targets, almost 30 touches, which would be the highest I believe he's had all year long. I think he's had a few in the mid-20s, but not. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything coming close to that. Yeah, it's a 29. So that actually should be his highest of the year because we had 28 intended touches in this one. So McCaffrey, deeply involved. I think you fade him in big tournaments. For a single entry, though, I would try to get just a little bit less unique than you would for some of the big tournaments. So I'm going to go McCaffrey for this first one. Ayuk came up everywhere. We did talk about trying to separate Ayuk out. I think Ayuk is a great play this week. Let me look at the advanced analytics to try to confirm the how and why I feel about that. Niners D, pretty even split relative to league averages in terms of man versus zone defense. They play man 27% of the time, giving up a 0.14 EPA. Not very good playing man defense. They play zone 62% of the time, give up a 0.04 EPA and a lot less touchdowns. So they are definitely weaker against man defense, or playing man defense rather. Brandon Ayuk has destroyed man defense on the year. 4.8 yards per route run, 33% target rate, compared to 25% target rate versus man, or versus zone rather, and 3.1 yards per route run. So Ayuk is going to get the best possible matchup. We just talked about the optimizer is going to put people on McCaffrey and Ayuk. So even despite that, this hurts me because I was talking about on here, like, what do we trust the most? I trust the data the most, but when the ownership is there and then you have the advanced analytic play, people are going to land there anyway, so you don't want to take the advanced analytic play. I think we want to go to George Kittle here and try to get slightly less owned. So that hurts me, but I'm going to go McCaffrey and Kittle, and I'm going to ignore the vaguely negative correlation between running backs and tight ends because they take red zone touches away from each other. Kittle breaks enough long plays. That's what we're going to try to do and try to consolidate production with this. What's another way that Ayuk doesn't get there? I guess we could play 3 Niners and play Niners D with it, and that'd be a way to get different as well. So we're saying the Niners still win. We're still playing the yes outcome, the expected outcome of the Niners winning this game. But we're trying to really carve away at how does a Brandon Ayuk not get there? How does McCaffrey get there, but maybe not have a full ceiling day? Enough for Kittle to get there and a defense to get there. I think this is the hope. Jared Goff playing outside. You want to throw that stuff in. Not a great team total for Detroit this week either. 22.3 implied points. Though honestly could be worse for Jared Goff playing outside. That's how I'm going to talk myself into the Niners D here. We talked about Lamar potentially being a chalk option. I do think that Lamar mentally appeals to me the most out of the other QB plays. We've talked about it before where Lamar just this past week put up just shy of 40 fantasy points. Patrick Mahomes has only been over 30 fantasy points once this year. But in this spot against the Ravens, maybe we see Mahomes run a little bit more. This is their season on the line. Like, I think that they are going to know going in that we have to press Patrick Mahomes into as much action as possible. Last week, he ran 6 times, which would be not the highest of the year. He ran 10 times a couple before, but has been an efficient rusher, even though he's definitely not getting touchdowns in the run game and not taking the tush pushes or any sort of easy kind of sneak kind of plays. They're going to play Mahomes. I don't love it. I don't have the most confidence in it, but I think for a single entry here where we think people are going to play Lamar as a pivot point to Niners stacks, I think that Mahomes is the play that we have to go to try to make sense of it. How does he get there? How does he get there? It's a good question. I don't think we want Pacheco in this build. I think it's got to be through the pass catchers. Let's see. Ravens D is just so good everywhere. They are a little bit weaker when playing man. They play man 25% of the time, but none of the Chiefs are actually very good against man. The best guy against man defense is Travis Kelce. Kelce, though, I think not going to sneak up on anybody this week, though. He does project to be lower owned than Rashee Rice. Well, I guess, no, comparably owned. Lower owned on ETR by a lot. ETR projects Rashee Rice for 45% ownership and Travis Kelce for 32%. Stochastic projects Rashee Rice for 36% ownership and Travis Kelce for 38%. I think Kelce is an interesting play, though. God, this is tough, man. 2-game slates, the advanced analytics, when you have all good defenses, really tough to parse out like what you want to lean in on more. I think it's got to be Kelce. But people are people going to go to Rashee Rice? I just don't think Rashee Rice gets that owned at 6,500 after a bad day. I'm going to go Rashee Rice. I have concerns about this. I think Kelce is the better play, but I think Kelce gets higher owned after 2 touchdowns last week. Rashee Rice, the dud game in the box score. I just don't think that people are going to flock there as much. And the workload wasn't down for him. I don't know. I'm going Rashee Rice. I'm not going to try to question that too much. Could double stack it, but let's figure out what else we're going to put in this lineup. Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I got to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown really fast because the advanced analytics for him are very important, I think, to discuss. So again, the defense here for the Niners overall plays man defense a very low 19.5% of the time. Plays zone 64% of the time. Very good defense against both. A negative 0.1 EPA against playing man defense, negative 0.14 EPA playing zone. That said, Amon-Ra is a zone destroyer. 3.2 yards per out run, 29% target rate playing against zone compared to 27% target rate and 2.1 yards per out run. So we're talking basically 1.1 yards per out run more for Amon-Ra St. Brown against zone defenses or heavy zone defenses. So I think Amon-Ra is a good play. Again, busted last week as chalk, or didn't bust. I mean, he still had a usable game, but didn't help anybody win money for sure. So in this spot, if he puts up 25 here instead of 22, I think that's enough to get him in a lineup. And honestly, the 22 might be enough to get him in this week. Check out the chat real fast. Put Gus in there. Gus, already contrarian with Mahomes. That's true, but for a short slate like this, you have to get kind of double contrarian. Even for a single entry, you're trying to pull. We just talk about the idea of levers, and I think that's something that I probably don't beat enough as a thought process for you guys out there. It's like you should be really pulling 1 to 3 levers of uniqueness on any slate. Where the chalk QB is going to be Brock Purdy. All right, can we play Lamar? Oh wait, Lamar's also going to be really chalky because he had the big game, and he's going to be the pivot point that people go to because he had a monster game last week. So then we have to think about what's the second lever to pull. It's probably now not playing Lamar. What's the third lever to pull? It's like not playing one of McCaffrey or Ayuk. So I think that's sort of how to try to think of it. It's like, what am I doing that are like my 3 big things to strip away from the binary, the chalk approaches, the things people are treating as like it's very much a likelihood to happen, if not a 100% certainty to happen. What do I do to get different from that? And I think that's where I try to approach things a little bit differently. So that's why I did get double unique based on what Chris is saying in the chat. Okay. So running back, got to get a running back in here. Justice Hill, better for this kind of game script. I would think Gus Edwards going to be better for a game script where Baltimore's in the lead. With the guys that we have in this roster, we could certainly play both outcomes if we wanted. We could play Mahomes playing from behind here. He has that game like Dak had, or basically Dak just continue to throw the ball in a game where Dallas was never going to win against Green Bay in the wild card. I think for this build, I'm going to go with more of a Baltimore KC shoots out. Niners, Detroit doesn't shoot out quite as much. I think that's going to be how I try to get unique for this. We are running dangerously low on money now. So we have to take one more cheap guy here. Who is Kadarius Toney going to play? Practicing in limited fashion. Kadarius Toney, can he outscore, if he's active, can he outscore Josh Reynolds? Can he outscore Jameson Williams? Maybe. I don't think I want to play 2 Detroit pass catchers, so I don't want to put Jameson Williams in this build. Kadarius Toney at 3,200. He's done, I think. I mean, he's practicing, so he's not done. Then that's why, too. Justin might be more of a chalk donkey than I give him credit for. If people think he's done, he's not going to play. That's when you play him. Like that's time. If he's going to actually be active, and he might get a shot to get 2 red zone touches that he sometimes gets in games, and he comes back in, and like they decide that they need everything here against Baltimore, who you do need to throw everything against the wall. That's why we play Kadarius Toney. So now I'm locked in. Now we're playing Kadarius Toney. We do need one more player in at 3,100, which is getting real narrow here. Ronnie Bell is probably active if Debo isn't going. I don't think he'll be active. I mean, he's practicing. I don't know. This is the closest he's been to playing in a few weeks. So I'm going to put him in here for now. Of course, if he's not active, then I'm going to swap out this lineup. But for right now, I'm going to put in Kadarius Toney because I just think he's going to sneak up on everybody if he ends up being active. That's the main reason why. And there we go. Yes, this pivot to Hardman or James if Toney isn't active. There we go. Probably would say to pivot to Hardman because Hardman and Toney run the same routes as we talked about a few times on the show. All right, 3,100 here. This is interesting. So Khalif Raymond, I think is practice. No, he didn't practice. Fuck, I thought he was limited yesterday. All right. I think that Khalif Raymond's an interesting play because if he's active, again, he has to be active. People are going to still play Josh Reynolds. Again, we had questions about Josh Reynolds. People are still going to play Jameson Williams because people can't help themselves. Could Khalif Raymond get in and get one of those 30-yard touchdowns he seems to hit over and over again? Maybe. So I'm gonna do this right now. Again, this build might change around over the course of a weekend. I might have to swap Kadarius Toney and Khalif Raymond, but this is how we're gonna approach it. My final team here, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz has been practicing, so he does have that over Khalif Raymond for sure. Honestly, Zach Ertz would be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? Can he be active? Man, Zach Ertz blowing up the slate. I will say right now, if Khalif Raymond is out, I would swap this to Zach Ertz. I think that is a very sharp call by Charles here, just because of the fact he's so cheap. We know he has a tangible ceiling, and we know that they're going to need the touches to go to somebody, and a game is going to be competitive. So we're going to do this way. Mahomes, McCaffrey, Justice Hill, Rashee Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kadarius Toney, George Kittle, Khalif Raymond. The one thing that you see with McCaffrey in this build is like you go down from McCaffrey to anybody else. I then don't have to play Kadarius Toney and Khalif Raymond, but I think that's what makes this relatively unique. I mean, it's definitely going to be unique for a single entry huddle. So 15K to first place into huddle. Let's put it in. Let's roll with it. Now let's check out the sims here from Stochastic, which should have loaded. Here we go. Okay, so we got the lineups in, and of course, Let's run the Sims here. And what Stochastic Sims do, if you haven't been following us all year long, they make 10,000 lineups and have those 10,000 lineups compete against each other 40,000 times to tell you what are the best plays. And of course, I did pull the ad here, but Stochastic, get it for yourself, 15% off. Link in the description down below. Of course, the data, the site that I worked at for years, done a great job for themselves, even though probably does a better job with betting data. We've confirmed that. I can say this, right? I can needle a company that I've helped build, right? So, but their DFS projections, top in the world for sure. And their DFS tools, top in the world. Just, sports betting, odd shopper, great, probably better. I think we know that for a fact. But check it out at Stochastic if you want to build some good lineups this weekend. And check out Probably too. New Probably ad as well down below. Win more bets by using Probably data. Been crushing it in NBA this week. Feeling very good about our content as well. We did some things on the Probably app YouTube channel. So check that out too. But NBA bets video if you want to get some NBA bets. And of course, Probably.com. My baby here that if you are supporting Splash Play, you should be supporting Probably as well, because Probably helps me make sense of my current life of this being my job and probably being my job. So check it out. Use the promo code SPLASH. Save yourself 50% on all of our data there. Pre-game data for under $10 a month at probably.com. All right, back to the Stochastic ad. I also got an underdog ad here too. Look at this, man. What you guys didn't know? You're watching the most professional production in the world here as we wait for the Sims to go. So got lots of fun new thingies here. More to come. Again, I told you guys, putting in the work here for you guys to make it count if you are joining the Splash Play channel for $4.99 a month down below. Simmies. See what these Sims are giving us. So we're the Sims right away. Going to push you towards Jared Goff. 3-2 with Jared Goff is the top ROI lineup. Jared Goff, Isaiah Pacheco, Justice Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Josh Reynolds, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Chiefs. That's a logical lineup. It is of course, me, the person who's building shit off the top of my head. Yes, the sim and the data and the projections came together to build a very logical lineup at the top ROI here. And that's also, I think, one of the upsides of that lineup too, is that you're playing a Lions heavy build, but it's not an outcome that says the Lions win. It could be the Lions, again, being Dallas and just playing from behind throughout that game, having to throw a bunch. So I think that lineup with Jared Goff definitely makes sense. Jared Goff won at number 2 as well with McGoffrey. That's if Jared Goff and Christian McCaffrey docked and put dick in foreskin. They become one man. Jared Goff and Christian McCaffrey, Justice Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Ravens. The one thing I'll take away here is that it does feel like the Sims are like an Amon-Ra St. Brown up top. So I think that lends some credence to what I was looking at before. Look at the exposures, though. So again, top exposed player, Christian McCaffrey. I called this 70 to 80%. He's at 75% exposure in the Sims. Pool ownership is at 68%. So right now, the Sims want you to get more. If I were running the Sims again, and I probably will do this when I actually run them for myself, I would try to bump the McCaffrey pool exposure to 80 to 90% and see if that's there, because I think the field will play McCaffrey. I think 68% is too conservative. If I had to guess, he will be 70. He'll probably be 70 to 85% would be the breadth that I think McCaffrey hits in terms of ownership. So just something to keep in mind here. The sim random as being in 68% of lineups. That can change the math a little bit. But again, make the choice for yourself. Like play McCaffrey, go all in on McCaffrey, or go all out on McCaffrey. But, maybe drop the ROI on him is another thing you could do. But that's sort of what I would try to push for McCaffrey. Is like, you got to think about this creatively, because if you play him straight away, you're just going to get duped a ton. Brandon Ayuk, number 2. So again, another thing that the Sims think is good chalk. He's 50% owned into the ownership projections, but 57% in the Sim. Jameson Williams coming up more than 2x the field. 56% Jameson Williams compared to 25% pool ownership. So the Sim agrees with my process, which makes me feel good, but it does not think Khalif Raymond is a play. It does think Jameson Williams is the play, and that is a lot of Jameson Williams compared to Josh Reynolds, who again, they do want you to get more Josh Reynolds in the field, 45% compared to 30% there. QB exposures. Let's see what we get here. Pretty flat ownership. Mahomes the lowest owned, so I do feel good about that in our hand build. Jared Goff, though, 24%. Brock Purdy, 28%. Lamar, 29%. So it is definitely Lamar and Purdy number 1, but the Sims are going to push people on Jared Goff more. So I do think that makes, if you're playing sim lineups, playing some Mahomes sim lineups is probably the way to go, a little bit more than you feel comfortable with, because of the fact that Jared Goff is coming up a lot more. And I think that Mahomes is going to be a kind of a forgotten man on the slate, because people love playing Lions. People love going to Jared Goff. He's won people a lot of money this year, even though the ceiling has not been there in a lot of spots where he was a chalk play. So I think Mahomes, to me, kind of the most appealing tournament play on the slate, even though Lamar is a better play. Purdy is a better play relative to projections. And Jared Goff is a more popular sim play, but everybody's going to be there, I think, because the Sim's going to be there. Checking the chat. Dick and foreskin, they become one man. That's I think that's the rules of what man are, is that if you do that with somebody confirm with me. If you've ever docked with another man, tell me, did you merge into one person and then get your name mispronounced by a host on a fantasy football stream? We'll have to find out. What else do we have here? Any lineups you guys want me to look at here? I feel like based on the will of the people, let's see what a good Lions onslaught is. Like what the Sims think is a good Lions onslaught. Let's go QB +4. So QB +4, only 2 of them made the top 150 lineups for the Niners. So it does feel like the Sims were saying that QBs +4 overstacking the Niners, not going to be the move as we talked about earlier. Purdy, McCaffrey, Pacheco, Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, McCole Hardman, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Chiefs. Yeah, I don't think that gets under-owned. The Juwan Jennings part, the Hardman part, we got our guy Justin here asking for Hardman. So you got one here. Again, Justin, if you want to play a bunch of Niners, this is one where you can play a bunch of Niners and get Hardman in as well. I kind of feel like this is not, it's not unique, but going to Juwan Jennings in addition to the 2 guys, like it's probably not a great lineup because if Ayuk gets there, if Kittle gets there, if Purdy gets there, if McCaffrey gets there, there's not a lot left for Juwan Jennings to eat off of. But I guess we're basically saying that the other game completely busts in this build. So I get the logic of this one. I think it makes sense. It probably ends up with a few dupes, but I don't think it's like a chalk lineup by any stretch. What else can we get here? We'll look at a few more Hardman lineups. All right, let's see. Lineups with contains Hardman. Looking for a good hard man here. We're going to find one. 250% ROI on this one with QB +2 from the Niners, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Isaiah Pacheco, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Watson, McCole Hardman, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Chiefs. This one's kind of sneaky because you're getting a stack of Chiefs here, but you're saying that Mahomes doesn't have the juice to make a winning lineup over Purdy, which I think is fair, but you're playing a 3-man Chiefs stack. These are the kind of builds I would really watch out for to try to make more of this weekend in a good way, because you're getting the best parts of the Niners here. We're saying that we're consolidating production for Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. And I also think you could, well, the price points might not work, but you could swipe this one to Brock Purdy, from Brock Purdy to Patrick Mahomes, and it would still make sense. So I think that appeals to me. We're also not playing any Ravens in this build. So this is basically a Chiefs win outright kind of build here with a Chiefs D in it. I think that's smart. So I would say really trying to push towards, if you're going to play a chalk stack, which could be any Brock Purdy stack, I think try to put in, like, cut your parlay on the rest of that lineup and play a Chiefs stack without Mahomes, or, you know, play a Chiefs stack and then swap Purdy to Mahomes. I think is one way to do that. So I think that's kind of interesting. JMO, just a good price. He's a good price, but like it's just like a guy's could be a good price all year and not hit. And I think that's what Jameson Williams has been. So I don't know, man. I think at a certain point, it's like, I get the Sklansky bucks, the going back to it over and over again, the hope that Jameson Williams at a low price comes through eventually, but like he just hasn't come through in a while. If he's out, if Khalif Raymond is out, you can talk about Jameson Williams, one more rodeo here. The Sims love him. But like, it's just how many times does the guy have to bust before we go, all right, maybe I should be responsible at my ownership of Jameson Williams. All right. Lamar CMC is what you want to see the exposure on. Let's figure that out here. Actually, we want the lineup ownership of these. I'm confused by Charles's question. So let's see what the ones are where they're together. So favorite the top 150. Kind of confused as to how I'm going to do this, but let's try to figure it out. Contains McCaffrey. Contains Lamar. All right, so this right now would be our top lineup. Lamar, Christian McCaffrey, Justice Hill, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Jameson Williams, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. Again, Jameson Williams just like herpes, just popping up whenever you don't want him to. If there ever is a time where you wanted herpes to pop up, you definitely don't want it in this particular build, but he's there. Lamar +3 is the build in this one. Yeah, I don't know. Let me hold on. Let's see what we can do. Let's favorite just these lineups. So in lineups with McCaffrey and Lamar, so these guys are in every lineup, you're getting a good amount of Justice Hill. You're getting a good amount of Rashad Bateman. You are still getting a lot of Jameson Williams, still getting a lot of Josh Reynolds. This is what you're getting alongside these guys, which I presume is what Charles is asking. Let's see. Cash game core, Purdy, CMC, Kittle, Jennings if Debo doesn't play. I think it's still Ayuk for that over Jennings. Ayuk will be, well, Ayuk is going to be played. He's going to be one of the chalkiest plays in the slate. So Ayuk should be in a cash game build. It should be Purdy, CMC, Kittle, Ayuk would be your, like you're going to have a quadruple stack or whatever as a triple stack as your cash game build. But then honestly, fuck man, for cash, it actually might be Purdy, McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk, Jennings, I think would be a QB +4 would be the chalk, I think, this week. So that would be, yeah, that's probably the cash game if Debo is out. All right. What else can we look at here? We want Raven stacks. All right, look up some Raven stacks here. Obviously, just saw one with McCaffrey in it. We'll figure out a few more. Stack contains Raven. Let's find one without McCaffrey. How about that? Let's look at the first one with McCaffrey. Lamar, McCaffrey. I think that's the one we just saw. Yes, this one is still the top one. Lamar, McCaffrey, Hill, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Jameson Williams, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Ravens. QB +1 here would look better for me with Lamar for sure. I think this is going to be the trap of the week, is that the Sims are going to force people onto Baltimore doubles and triples. And in reality, the most likely way that Lamar makes a winning lineup is that he has a good rushing day and only sustains enough for one pass catcher. Maybe a pass catcher and a running back can get there. But I think try to watch out for these Lamar triples because I think they're going to sneak in a lot. And I just don't know for sure that I don't think he can create enough production for Zay, Bateman himself, and also leave enough for Justice Hill to get there. So I think that's something I'd watch out for in some of these lineups. But let's look at one without McCaffrey here because McCaffrey's popping up in every Lamar lineup. Lineup does not contain McCaffrey. So if you don't play McCaffrey, you're getting a QB +2 with Lamar, which I do think feels better. We're getting Lamar with Justice Hill and Zay Flowers. That makes a lot more sense to me. Lamar, Pacheco, Justice Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Zay Flowers, Josh Reynolds, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Lions. So we're getting 2 tight ends, Josh Reynolds, but we're fading McCaffrey, so that's our big lever. And then I guess double stacking the Ravens would be our other lever, along with playing. Yeah, you know what? This is fine because we're playing just one Niner. So that's the thing. So we got unique by not playing McCaffrey, playing just one Niner. Playing Lions defense is definitely a big lever too. So that is 3 levers that are pulled. And again, another 3 lever special is what we're trying to have. Seems like very few RB as flex way to pivot. No, I think the pivot would just be to not play as much tight end at flex if you wanted to. I think as Nolan is saying here, double tight end in cash. I agree with that. Tyler's saying the same thing. I think double tight end in cash is going to be the play you want to make. I think it's that QB. If Debo's out, it's that QB +4 with all the Niners, and then probably one more tight end. If I had to guess, it would be probably Laporta with that. I think. But yeah, I think that's the cash build. All right. Anything else to look at here? I feel like I'm missing something that I should be looking at. Let's look up some. Look at Mahomes lineups. That'll be the last thing we look at here. Because I do like the Chiefs stack. I think that is your tournament play because you're hitting 2 notes there. It's the Chiefs potentially upsetting the Ravens, which I know people are going to expect. And then also Mahomes being low owned in the Sims, going to be low owned in projections. So that's why Mahomes to me does appeal quite a bit if we did miss my earlier argument for him. Mahomes QB +3 with 1 bring back. Mahomes, McCaffrey, Justice Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Rashee Rice, Jameson Williams, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray. Chiefs. This build certainly works. Getting unique by playing Travis Kelce and Noah Gray. That is a little bit of a thin outcome, but definitely there is a way that can get there. And you're fading Pacheco in a Chiefs stack. So I think that is why that is the highest ROI sim lineup for Mahomes. Number 2 is Mahomes, McCaffrey, Pacheco, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Josh Reynolds, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, and Chiefs. That one, again, the Travis Kelce, Noah Gray seems to be the way that the Sims want you to try to get unique. And then did drop ownership a little bit by going to Juwan Jennings and Josh Reynolds together in that one. Let's just find one without McCaffrey, and then we'll close it out here. Try to give you guys some tips to get unique here. Does not contain McCaffrey. Mahomes, Jahmyr Gibbs, Justice Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Rashee Rice, Jameson Williams, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Lions. So 1 Niner in that build. I think that is the main thing that I would try to really isolate here that we talked about with the optimizer on Fantasy Cruncher. Playing less Niners. All the top ROI lineups have less Niners unless they're concerted Niner stacks. So really keep that in mind here. But that is definitely going to be an interesting one to look at. Lineups of less than 47K. All right, we can do that. I know there's going to be a lot of them here. The pricing is pretty aggressive. Line up less than. Nope, nothing. Let's see under 48. Nothing under 48. Under 49 seems to be the best you can get. It is a Purdy stack, 48-7. Actually, if you're going to pull some Niners stacks that have like a little more Niners, I think this is where you pull them from, to Charles's point. Oh, 49.7. Okay, well, we're going to 49,000. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Justice Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Josh Reynolds, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Ravens. So we are getting a full Niners-Lions game stack here, a QB +3 with 3 bringbacks. These are kind of fun. I think if you're going to play chalky shit, if you're going to play, again, Niners onslaughts, take them from really low salaries. I think even going under 49.7 is probably not going to do it for you. I think go under 49, go under 49.5 even. I'll look up Charles's 49.7 one, but I think these are going to be pretty chalky too. Yeah, Purdy, McCaffrey, Justice Hill, Ayuk, Josh Reynolds, Jamison Williams, Kelsey, Kittle, Chiefs. I think that gets duped. I don't think that's going to sneak up on anybody. I think you really got to go down salary if you're going to play Niners stacks. And that's actually, now that I'm seeing that is going to be a move that I definitely make for myself this weekend. All right, that's going to be it for this. Now let's do our 3 takeaways to get unique on this lineup, or the slate rather. 3 takeaways. Number 1 would be separate out Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk. That's the easy first thing you could do. All the lineups are going to be forced to playing McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk together. Those guys are both great plays. It's also very hard for me to not want to play them. So that's where you kind of run into it. That the math pushes people there. Psychologically, they're good plays. Even sharp players, like I would fancy myself as, I want to play him because the advanced analytics look great for both, and we know McCaffrey's workload is going to be huge. So you fade one of those guys. That's going to be a way to get you away from a lot of the field, man. Probably 60% of the field that would get you away from, if not 70%. So I think not playing one of Ayuk and McCaffrey, you don't have to do it in every lineup, but I would do it for a portion of lineups for sure. Number 2 takeaway to get unique. Got to play at least one upset. I think you have to play a Chiefs upset of the Ravens or a Lions upset of the Niners, but I think playing one upset is a good way to get unique here and also just make it easier for you to figure out what that looks like. How does Christian McCaffrey not make a lineup where the Lions win? How does Patrick Mahomes, what stacks make it there if the Chiefs beat that game, if the Chiefs win and the Ravens don't put up enough points to win it? Like, what happens in that game? Think that through really and then make your lineups off of that, but I think that's the main thing. Number 3 would be, you already know this one, you got to try to play 3 or less Niners. I would say really 2 Niners or less, I think would be the cap that I would try to put. But I'm saying 2 or less Niners because everybody's going to try to overstack. If you are going to overstack, like, drop salary, pull another lever to get unique, as we talked about. Find that lever to get unique. It could be playing Hardman. It could be playing Kadarius Toney. It could be playing Khalif Raymond. But you have to have some aggressive levers. You're going to play a lot of Niners. So the easier thing to do is just to limit yourself to Niners and try to concentrate that production. And I think, to me, that's the approach that I always advocate for. So just try to limit yourself, if you can, to 2 Niners. And if you're going to play more, like, you got to get unique, man. You got to get unique or you're going to get duped out the ass. So there you go, guys. That's everything for this one. Again, check out the Stochastic subscription down below here. 15%. Hit the link in the description to save yourself that money, or use promo code SPLASH on there as well. Also, please do subscribe down below, hit the like button, leave a comment. Of course, Splash Play on that March every day here. I keep showing up to do the work. Not doing 5 days a week right now just because it's hard to do it. But once the second that big board tournament drops, Underdog, we are back to 5 days a week. So strap in for that one. Of course, the journey marches on here. Fantasy football year round here on Splash Play. The reading of names. Got to do this one. Have not done this in a minute here. So these are all the fine folks that help us put on the show every day by being a paying member. You're hitting that join button down below for $4.99 a month. You also get access to all my data, custom VIP badges, emojis, all that stuff as well. So please join down below. Help me support putting on the show over and over again. Robert Griffin the Turd, Historical Anomalies, Matthew, Tyler, CLN, Mathology, Rupesh, Willis, Nick Hedgeland, Ivan Black, Rod Beath Robin, It's Just Port, our guy Mark, aka Io, aka Tony Mark, Rob Van Natten, Brandon Wagner, Consigliere, Aaron D, Nez, Jake Twitchell, fucking Alpha, Mr. Sammy Telesco, I am the KY, Kevin Castro, Go Birds, Eric Jones, Dylan, Lateralis, Primetime KG, Eric Swift, Lunchable Connoisseur, Short Gamer, Carlos Manzo, Derek Mullen, Like This Monster, Mr. TD, Rashid Grant, Pathora, Nick Chelas, NorCal Copwatch, Spurious News, Jay Stress, the Snowman, Al Paul, Jeremy Parker, Matt Murphy, Stephen Anthony Spoon, and Kyle Davis. Thank you all for helping me put on the show. I wish you guys the best of luck this weekend in particular, but of course, all the same for all you guys as well. Check out probably one more plug there as well. 50% off with the promo code SPLASH. The best betting data you will find. Again, we're talking about 20% ROIs per sport. Also, win rates 50 to 60% reliably per sport. That is the best you'll find in the biz. Maybe OddsJam is a little bit better. I don't know. We haven't done the back testing on OddsJam, but better than other ones out there. So follow us at Probably and get more winning bets for yourself. And of course, follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. And I think back Monday with the recap here. And I guess our first look at the Super Bowl. So that'll be interesting to see then. Enjoy your days, my sweet, sweet boys. And of course, good luck. Bye.